Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on the Recovery Housing Repairs Fund application. So my name is Danielle Gray, and I serve as the Executive Director for Ohio Recovery Housing. And so during today's webinar, we're going to go over the purpose of the Recovery Housing Repairs Funds, the eligibility, so what are eligible organizations and what eligible properties are, as well as what types of expenses can be covered for the repairs fund. We're also going to talk about the process for the funds. So you'll learn about the application process as well as how to get reimbursement for your expenses, some key things that you should remember, and then answer any questions. So if you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, some things I want to point out to you as well is there is a question box. So if you have questions, be sure to type them in the box. I've got time reserved at the end to go over all of those questions. So, please do, ask any questions that you have. Chances are, if you have a question, so does someone else. So we want you to ask those questions. And then also, the most popular question I usually get on webinars is, can I get a copy of the slides? And certainly, they are in the handouts section. So if you look in the handout section, there's a copy of the slides from today. And so you can open that and view that. And if you want to save those slides for after the webinar, download a copy to your computer, because if you don't download a copy, when I close out GoToWebinar, the slides will disappear. So be sure to download those and save them if you would like to view them after today's webinar. So getting us started today about the funds, if you had previously applied or you previously attended any webinars or anything around the Recovery Housing Repairs Funds that were available last year, I want you to take a moment and kind of wipe the slate clean, because these are different funds. Yes, they're similar, but they are different funds. Things have changed. And so I don't want you to get confused between what was available, previously and what's available right now. So just take a moment. If you have that information in your head, kind of wipe the slate clean so we can start over and you can get accurate information about what these funds are. So these funds are coming from the Ohio Housing Trust Fund, and a portion of the Ohio Housing Trust Fund was provided to Ohio Recovery Housing to distribute to recovery housing operators for critical repairs to assist recovery homes in meeting quality standards. So these are not housing and urban development funds, recovery housing pilot funds. These are from the Ohio Housing Trust Fund. And the purpose of these funds are to assist recovering housing operators in achieving certification or retaining certification. In just less than a year from now, on January 1st, 2025, certification is going to be required for most recovery homes in the state. And the state was committed to ensuring that there was a ladder up to success for recovery homes. So if they were not meeting the quality standards, that they provided resources to help people meet those quality standards. And so these funds are to assist organizations that own their properties in achieving those property-related, quality standards, and for organizations that are leasing the properties that they're appropriately furnished and things like that. So that is the purpose of these funds. These funds are not intended to help organizations open new homes. So they are not for brand new operators who are looking to open a new property. That is not the purpose and intention of these funds. They are intended to help existing recovery housing operators who are struggling to meet the quality standards by providing them some additional assistance in meeting the quality standards. And they're also not intended to make major renovations to existing houses or to add capacity to existing houses by doing additions or things like that. Again, they really are for existing recovery housing properties that are seeking to either achieve certification or maintain their certification, and there's physical property improvements that need to be made to that house in order for the home to achieve or maintain their certification. And so eligible properties. Eligible properties must meet the definition of recovery housing in the Ohio Revised Code, and I'm going to skip ahead here to the definition of recovery housing. It is housing for individuals recovering from alcoholism or drug addiction that provides an alcohol and drug-free living environment, peer support, assistance with obtaining alcohol and drug addiction services, and other alcoholism and drug addiction recovery assistance. So this means that funds are only for recovery homes. Funds cannot be used for adult care facilities or residential treatment centers, or homeless shelters, or other housing types. They have to be used for recovery housing residences. And the property can be owned or leased by the organization operating the recovery housing. So the property must be owned or leased by the organization, not by an individual. So for example, if the business owner is the person who owns the home, and then the business operates out of that home, we need to see that it's the business, it's the organization that owns the home. We can't provide funds, for individuals. We can only provide funds for organizations. And so we need to see that it's the organization that owns the property. And you must also have documentation with the address of the property. So we need to be able to see that it's the organization that owns that exact property. There are many types of documentation that we'll accept, but it needs to have the organization's name. It needs to demonstrate that the organization, owns or leases the property, and it has to have the address of the property. And the property must be going through the certification or recertification process. So if you're interested in these funds and you have not yet applied for certification through Ohio Recovery Housing, our application will reopen on April 1st, and you'll be able to apply for certification. And then once you've got your on-site visit as a result of that certification process, then you can apply for funds. Any applications that we receive that have not yet had an on-site visit for certification or recertification, we will not be able to accept. We will reject those applications, and you can reapply once you have your on-site visit. And then and again, these funds are designed to help people get certified. So your property must achieve full certification, so a full 2-year certification, or become recertified by October 15th, 2024. These funds are time limited, and we have a very limited amount of time that we can expend them. So we want to give these to organizations, again, that are going to be achieving certification by that January 1st, 2025 deadline. And so therefore, you have to be able to achieve that full certification by October 15th, 2024. And you'll have to provide us, again, that documentation that you've achieved your certification. And so then we can release the funds. So this means that if the property needs a huge major repair that's going to take you beyond October 15th, 2024, then you will not be eligible for the funds. We need to see in the application that your project timeline is within that date, and you're going to be eligible to complete all of your work by October 15th, 2024. And just to reiterate here, the property must apply for ORH certification. So this means that the property must have appropriate policies and procedures in place, appropriate staffing in place, appropriate programming currently being implemented in the house. And you must participate in the on-site visit. So funds may be used to address any eligible physical property recommendations on the on-site visit report. If we don't get a copy of that report with your grant application, we cannot provide funding. And then again, funds are to help with certification. So you must be able to achieve full certification by October 15th, 2024. So that means if there are other programming elements that were noticed during the on-site interview and visit, that you need to redo your policies and procedures, or you need to have additional staffing or things like that within your program, you need to be able to correct all of those things by October 15th, 2024, get your certification in order to get the funding. And if you cannot achieve certification by October 15th, 2024, we cannot award funding because these funds really are to help people become certified. And so the eligible uses of funds, and these are eligible uses for funds for organizations that own the property. So if you own the property that you're applying for funds for, again, the improvement must be essential for certification based on the on-site visit. So, for example, if you just want new windows in the home, but new windows weren't needed in order for you to achieve certification, that is not an eligible thing that we can fund. So we really have to look at your report and see what do you need in order to achieve that report. And another thing here, for example, is if the report says you need to, like clean a bathroom, that doesn't mean that you get a bathroom remodel, right? You just need to clean the bathroom. So it really, look at that report and make sure that your application matches, again, what is essential for you to do in order to achieve certification. We cannot provide funds for things that go beyond what is basic and essential for certification. And so some examples of if there are these deficiencies are found during your on-site visit, then these are examples of things that the funds can be used for. So installation of required safety equipment, so things like smoke detectors and fire extinguishers, installation of egress windows. And I will say here too that when we go and we examine the house, we examine what's physically available at the house at that time and what you put on your application. So if you put on your application that you're serving 5 people, but you want to do a renovation to your basement and add 2 additional people, that's not going to show up on your report because you applied for a home for 5 people. And it's about, again, achieving certification. And if you don't need that in order to get certified, then we will not be able to provide funding for it. But if we see an existing home that applies for 5 people and you have an existing bedroom in the basement that needs an egress window, then that is something that we can provide funding for. So again, just be very careful in your application for certification, and on this application that you're presenting the house, it should be prepared as you want it certified as on your application, and that's what we're going to go off of when we come out and we visit the house for your certification, and then also for this application. You can also ask for funds for installation or repair of kitchen cabinets, appliances, or food storage. And again, these are essential appliances that are needed to achieve certification. For example, dishwashers. We do not require dishwashers for ORH certification, so you would not be eligible for funds for a dishwasher. It's only for essential appliances that are required for certification. And then purchase of essential furniture. And there's a caveat here too. If you need to purchase a bed, we are not allowing these funds to be used to purchase bunk beds. They can only be used to purchase single beds. And then funds can be used in installation or repairs of appliances that are not in good working order. So again, if your refrigerator is in good working order, we cannot buy you a new fridge because you have one that's in good working order. And the repairs of health and safety hazards, such as broken windows, loose tiles, torn carpet, things of that nature. And then fees to cover the cost of removal of unsafe structures and associated debris. So for example, if during your review, it was noted that the fence in the backyard is falling over and you need to correct that, you can apply for funds to have the fence removed and then have all of the debris removed. And then really it's repairs that can be done within 3 months of approval. So again, these should be small, minor repairs. We're not talking major remodels of homes. And then if you lease the property, we cannot provide funding for anything that is fixed to the property. So for example, your furnace is fixed to the property. So we would not be able to provide any funding to repair a furnace. Light fixtures and things like that, they're fixed to the property. We cannot provide funding for anything of that nature. But we could provide funding for, say, again, like you need to replace a bed or there's a dresser that's broken that needs to be replaced. We can provide funding for those essential furniture items. And again, it must be essential according to the on-site visit report. And so those are eligible uses of funds for leased properties. So if you lease the property and you don't own it, those are the only things that we can provide funding for. And then ineligible uses of funds. We cannot provide funding for rental subsidies, so we cannot pay for residents to live in recovery housing, new construction or purchase of buildings. These funds cannot be used for staff salaries or other supportive services, for replacement of appliances or other items that are in good working order, installation or repair of items that are not needed to meet quality standards. We cannot pay for decorations. We can't pay for routine maintenance or routine supplies or consumables. So we cannot buy your cleaning supplies, your dishes, linens. You cannot use these funds for those items. And we cannot do routine maintenance. So if there's just routine maintenance that's involved in the upkeep of a house, these funds, can't be used for that. And there are maximum amounts. So the total amount per property is $10,000 per property, and then $30,000 per organization. So if you're an organization and you run 6 homes, you can apply for $5,000 per property because that adds up to $30,000. But if you're an organization that is only 1 house, you can only apply for $10,000 for that 1 house. So those are the maximum amounts per property and per organization. And so the process, the funds are provided upon reimbursement and upon certification. So this means that you first must complete the application. I'm going to go over the application in just a minute. Have your application approved. You will complete the repairs. So you'll do the repairs, and then you'll save your documentation, so all of your invoices and your receipts. And you'll submit your final receipts and invoices to ORH along with the documentation that the repairs were completed. It's at our discretion. We may require a second on-site visit to verify that the repairs were completed. And then you would also complete your ORH certification. So you would submit your ORH certificate along with all of the other documentation. And then we will provide you with reimbursement. So again, you have to be able to address everything that's related to your ORH certification and get your certification approved in order to get the funds. We cannot give you the funds if you're not going to be certified. So that means that there may be some things that you have to do where these funds cannot cover. So for example, if you needed to increase your staffing, these funds cannot help you with that, but you would have to do that and figure out a way to do that and become certified. So that way we can provide you the funds for reimbursement. I'm just going to bring over the application here so you can see what it looks like and how to complete it. So there's instructions here and goes over a lot of what I talked about earlier about the instructions, what's eligible, what's not eligible. And then you would put in your organization name and your address that we would use to send mail to the organization. This is the address we're going to send the check to. So make sure it's a good address where you can get mail regularly. And then the name of the person responsible for the application and their email. So if we have questions or if we need anything, we're going to reach out to this person, and then they're going to have to respond to us. And if they don't respond to us, then we're going to have to deny your application. So make sure that the name and email you put in here is correct. There's no typos because that's what we're going to use to reach out to you. You also give us your phone number. And then tell us some basic information that we're required to collect for the application. So how many unique individuals does this property serve per year? And so you would type in, again, per individuals that you serve per year. So say, you have a house that has 6 people in it, but, again, people move in, they move out. You might say, hey, we end up serving 10 people throughout the year, even though, your capacity is 6, you would type 10 in here. And then you would let us know if parents are allowed to have their minor children living in the property, and you can say yes or no. And then if the recovery home serves any specialized populations. So things like you specifically serve veterans, or you specifically serve people who are returning to the community after incarceration. These are not eligibility criteria. You don't get points based off of these answers, but it is stuff that we're required to collect for our grant reporting. And then you give us the information about the house. So we need the house address, what county it's in, and then you'll let us know, are you currently certified? Yes or no. Have you participated in a dwelling review as a part of ORH certification? You would tell us yes or no. And then if you say yes, you would have the option here to upload your report that you received as a part of your certification or recertification. And then you would tell us if the organization owns the property, and you would upload your documentation of ownership. If you don't own the property, then we ask, hey, does the county board own the property? And then you would have to upload your documentation here from the landlord that they're aware that the property is being used as a recovery home. And then you would just do a brief description of the repairs that are needed and the issues that were identified and what you're asking for funds for. And then describe your timeline to complete the repairs and how the project will be completed within 3 months. And then you would do your budget. So we have a required budget form that you are required to use, and you can click the blue link to download a copy of the form. And this is what the form looks like. And so you will list out here each item that was listed as needed for you on your report. And so, and then your plan to address that item and the amount that you're requesting from the grant in order to cover that item. So for example, here you might put in that the reviewers noticed that the carpet needed to be replaced. So you would say, hey, the carpet needs to be replaced. We are going to replace the carpet. It doesn't, need to be a novel written here. And then you want $3,000 to help with the replacement of the carpet. Again, go off of what the estimate that you got. It could be, more or less. I'm honestly just making up numbers here. And then again, we need to see that you're addressing each item that's on that list. So you might, so the reviewers might have noted that your staff needs your training on your medication policy. So even though you're not requesting funding for that, we want to see that you have a plan to address it so that way you can achieve certification within the required timeline. And so you can say, hey, we are having a staff training on the medication policy, on March 1st, right? So that's how you're going to meet that requirement. And you would put 0 because you don't need any funding from the grant. And now, for instance, if there's a project that's costs over $10,000, so say it's a major thing in your roof and it's going to cost $11,000, say a roof repair, and you would say, hey, we're going to repair the roof. And you would request $10,000, and you say, I need $1,000 from another funding source because it's going to be $11,000. An alternative funding source, you could say we're going to do a fundraiser. It's going to come out of our reserve of funds, but we got to see like, hey, you have enough resources to cover that additional expense for a repair that's going to cost over $10,000. Because again, we don't want to award you $10,000 and then you don't have enough funds to complete the repair. You're not going to be able to finish it and get certified. And we could have awarded those dollars to somebody else. Okay. So there's additional instructions here too. Make sure you put your organization name and your house address on the form. And then you'll see your total amount requested calculated here at the bottom. And then you would just save this file to your computer. So file, save as, and I'm just going to put it on my desktop. Okay, and then you go back to the application and you go to choose file and you can upload the budget that you completed. You also need to submit a W-9 and make sure that that is for the organization that is applying for the funds. So make sure it matches the name of the organization on your application, matches what's on the W-9. And then submit any other supporting documentation. And what this is, for example, hey, we went out and we saw that there was water damage on the ceiling in one of your bedrooms or something like that. And we said, hey, you need to fix this water damage. And you went to go fix it, and what happened was your contractor found a larger problem with like your roof or your gutters or something. And so now, what really needs to happen is the gutter needs to be repaired. If we see on your budget that you're like, hey, I want the gutter to be repaired, then we're gonna be like, hey, that's not on your report. But this would be uploading the supporting documentation from your contractor that says, hey, we need to fix the gutter in order to fix the roof leak. And so we can draw that connection and it all makes sense. And we know, yes, the report says, fix the water damage on the ceiling, but it's a bigger issue. They need the funds to fix the gutter. And, you can upload that documentation here. And you can also use this space here to tell us that story so we know it makes sense. Again, it's on you to help us understand why you need the funds and what's going on. And then you can provide that documentation from the contractor that's like, hey, it's you need to fix the gutters in order to fix this ceiling damage. And then you can put in your total request for the property. And then you'll have to agree to our agreement statement here. So again, understanding that submitting the application doesn't mean you're going to get approved. You have to wait to get approval. Understanding that we're going to use the contact information that you put on the application, and that person's going to be responsible for responding to us. That funds are provided on a reimbursement basis. So that means we have to see documentation of what you actually paid to have the funds, to have the repairs done. And then we provide reimbursement. And then you must complete the entire certification process by October 15th, 2024 in order to get reimbursement. If you don't achieve a certification by that date, you're not going to be able to get reimbursement. And then again, we do have extensions offered for extenuating circumstances, but you must apply for those extensions. We're not going to automatically give them to you, and they are for extenuating circumstances only. And then you must participate in the ORH outcomes tool in order to receive funds. So we have to see that you're participating in that. And then you'll certify that the information is true and accurate, that we may request additional information from you for the application, and you must provide that information to us, and that you must use our budget template form provided. And if you don't use that template form, we're going to reject your application. So please use that form. And then you would say that you agree, and you would submit your application. And now if you have more than one property, you would submit a new form for each property. So that way we can clearly see, what repairs and what things are needed at which exact property, and you'll receive approval letters for each property. And so to help us with our evaluation of applications, make sure you submit all of the appropriate documents. And review each expense for eligibility and appropriateness. And again, it's on you to make the case that this is something that's really needed in order for you to achieve certification. And so make sure that that's crystal clear to us that I need this repair done so I can achieve certification. Here's how I'm going to address the reviewer's concerns. Review your timeline for achieving certification. Again, we have to spend these funds by the end of the year. So we got to have you certified by October 15th. So make sure that your timeline for everything that you need to do for certification can be done by October 15th. And then review, again, your plan for other requirements for certification. So even if it's not something you're getting funding for, we want to see what your plan is to address that item. Because again, if we can't certify you by October 15th, we've reserved those funds for you, and we won't be able to provide them to you if you didn't actually earn certification. And any changes to your budget must be approved. So you can request changes to your budget, but you may not request additional funding. So be very careful when you submit your budget that you are submitting appropriate amounts for all of your expenses. So for example, if you had submitted for $3,000 to repair your carpet and $1,000 for your refrigerator, and here now it turns out that that the carpet installation is less expensive than you thought, but the refrigerator expense is more. Like, you can email us and be like, hey, can I shift items from line item to line item? But what you can't do is add additional things. So if the carpet installation was cheaper than you thought, and you didn't put on your application that you're going to use funds to that you need to install smoke detectors, you can't go back and add that additional expense. So be very careful. Take your time getting appropriate estimates from folks so you know exactly how much things are going to cost. and you know like what the costs are going to be, I highly, highly encourage you to go out and get those solid estimates and don't just ballpark it in your head, because it might end up being a lot more expensive than you had originally thought, and you can't come back and ask for additional funds. And again, if you can't afford to do the work and the work doesn't get done, you're not going to achieve certification, you're not going to get, reimbursed. And then you may again request to move funding from one line item to another line item, but that does need to be approved. So if you need to do that, you'll have to email us and we'll have to approve it in advance. And so some important notes that I really want you to remember. So this is me being repetitive, but I want you to remember these things. First is that you must agree to participate in the ORH outcomes tools. So make sure that you're participating in those outcomes tools. Repairs must be completed by a licensed contractor. So if you're applying for funds to have things done, this is not something that you can like hire yourself to do and pay yourself. You have to hire a licensed contractor. We have to see an invoice for the exact amount that that licensed contractor charged you, and then and a receipt that shows that you paid that licensed contractor, and then we provide reimbursement for what you paid. And again, this is not something like you can just hire any person to do. It has to be a licensed contractor. And then you must obtain certification in order to get reimbursement. So again, make sure that you really believe that you're able to get through the entire certification process by October 15th, so that way you can get reimbursed. And you must achieve that by October 15th, or else we will not be able to reimburse the expenses. All right, and I already went over how to apply, so you can visit the application on our website, and how to get to the application. Here is our main website, and we have this big yellow button right here, Recovery Housing Repairs Fund Application. It takes you right to the application, so you can fill that out. And so some tips for your budget: list each expense separately. This really helps, especially if you're applying for things. For example, if you need appliances and you put in, I want to buy a refrigerator and a dishwasher, and it's going to cost $2,000, we will reject that entire expense because you cannot use funds to buy dishwashers. So by putting items on a separate line item, that helps us go through each item and say, yes, this is allowable, no, this one is not, and go through that appropriately. And then make sure each expense is tied to a recommendation on the report. So again, make sure that you are making that argument that this supports what the reviewers found when they visited the property. And get a good estimate for your expenses. So again, it's a pain. We can make adjustments, but it's a pain in the butt to make adjustments to your budget, and then you can't ask for additional items once you've submitted your budget. So get a good estimate, put together a good budget. And then also, again, remember, we're going to be asking for documentation of what exactly you paid. So if you put in $1,000 for a refrigerator and then you find one for $600 and you buy it, then we're only going to give you $600. So make sure that you're doing that research and getting good estimates. And that also helps us as well, because we don't have a ton of money here. So if you are as accurate as possible in your budget, it helps you because you can cover all of your expenses. But then again, for that refrigerator situation, we're only going to give you the $600, and we could have given that $400 to somebody else to help somebody else out. So be as accurate in your budgeting as possible to both help yourself, but then also help us spread these dollars as wide as we can and help more recovery housing operators. And then again, we can only award $10,000 per property, so make sure your application is for $10,000 or less. If you submit an application for more than that, we'll have to reject it. Here's just an example of what I was talking about, putting things on different line items. So purchase refrigerator and stove for $1,000. Instead, put purchase refrigerator $600, purchase stove $400. And again, I'm making these numbers up. So those are, an example of how you want each expense on a separate line item in your budget. All right, and so now with that, I am going to look at our questions box and start answering some of the questions you guys have. So let me get this. All right, we've had issues with water getting into the basement. We're looking to see about waterproofing the basement. Do we have to wait until the basement floods again? The water table changed in the neighborhood and after construction was completed. Again, it has to be on that on-site visit report. So if the reviewers are there and they don't notice any issues with the basement, like any water damage from like previous water getting in or any standing water in the basement, we have to go off of what we see at the time of the report. And again, if there's existing water damage and we're like, hey, you need to fix this water damage, and then you can get a report from the contractor that says like, you know, the reason why this is happening is because you need to waterproof the basement, then we can connect that through and you can make that argument, and that would be something that would be eligible for funds. So again, those are really specific circumstances, but we got to go out and we got to see it and then have that show up on the report, and then make sure you're submitting all that documentation with the application. All right, and then where will the recording of this be posted? We're going to post it on the website. So I'll bring up our website again. We have resources for operators and Recovery House Repairs Fund. And instead of sign up for informational webinar, we'll replace that with a link to the recording once that is available. It should be within the next couple of days or so. All right, do we have to have residents in the home to apply for funding? You do not, but again, you need to be able to meet the requirements for full certification by October 15th, 2024. So that would be something that I think would be very difficult for you to make an argument that if you don't have residents living in your home right now, that you're going to be ready for full certification, not just preliminary certification, but full certification by October 15th, 2024. So, so that would be a struggle, because again, this isn't for new operators looking to open new homes. This is for existing people who need help meeting the quality standards and who are running existing recovery homes, and they need these funds to come up to quality. So I would, so again, like the way it's written, yes, you can apply, but I would think that that would be a struggle to make that argument that you're going to be fully certified in 8 months, you know, eight months in a week. And can you perhaps go through the slides one more time if there's time? I don't think there's time for me to go over all of the slides again, but if you if there's a specific slide that you want me to talk about, I can go back to that one. You can type that in, and then again, the recording is going to be posted on our website in a couple of days. And then does the operator have to be a nonprofit agency to be eligible? No. You do not need to be a nonprofit to be eligible, but what we do need to see is that the organization owns the property, not an individual person. So as long as the business, you know, even if it's for profit, is the one that owns the property, then, you know, we can, or is the, I'm sorry, owns the property, or is the one that is leasing the property for funds that are available for those that lease, then we can provide the funds. Is there a cap on the amount that we can request? I have a home that was gifted by my nonprofit that is needing full renovation. Yes, there is a cap. It is $10,000 per property, and I would say that that's not going to be eligible. Like again, these are funds for minor repairs. These are not for full renovations, so that is not something that is eligible. Unfortunately, these funds cannot be used for that. Our deed to the home is in my husband's and my name, but so is the LLC. So unfortunately, we cannot provide funding for a home that is in the name of an individual. We can only provide funding for homes that, you know, again, are owned or leased by the organization. And so if the home is in your personal name, Even if your business is also in your name, you know, we cannot provide funding. That property needs to be in the name of the organization. Do we start the repairs now or when you come out to the property the first time? Again, these funds are based off of what we see in the on-site visit. So if you repair something and then it's repaired and we show up, it's not going to show up on your report and we're not going to be able to provide funds. So, so if you need the funds to do the repairs, then, you know, you should be able to, you know, wait until they show up to the on-site, see what's on the report, see what's required for certification, and then submit your application. Your application will be approved. And then after you get that approval is when you should go out and start doing the repairs. So that way you know for certain you're going to be eligible for reimbursement for those repairs. And then deny funds request if they seem unreasonable, like asking reimbursement for a bed that costs $500 or a $3,000 fridge. And again, we may ask for additional documentation if it seems unreasonable. So again, if you're asking for something that seems crazy expensive, you know, we're going to ask you, hey, where's your estimate for that? And so, for example, you know, a home that's getting a stove, and the stove seems very expensive, but then we get the documentation of the estimate, and here they need to get a special stove that can fit correctly in the layout of the house, so it's more expensive. We're like, okay, that makes sense. But that's why it's really important that you give us good contact information, because we may have those types of questions. So we're not going to outright deny anything just because it seems unreasonable to me, but we may follow up with you and ask for additional information to justify those additional expenses. Right. And if your home received repair funding last year, is the same house eligible to receive funding for a second year? No, if you received funding last year, you're not eligible for this round of funding. And honestly, you shouldn't need it because you should have gotten the funding a year ago. Your certification should be good for 2 years. You're not eligible for this round of funding. All right, are we adding everything, including the LLC and the deed, into a trust? Again, that's something where we just need to see that it's the organization that owns the property. And yeah, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a legal expert, but we want to see that it's the organization that owns the property. And so if you have any documentation from your tax records, from the auditor, or a deed that shows that the owner of the property is the same organization that's applying for funds, then that's something that we can use. And in my mind, again, putting things into a trust won't get you there, because just because it's in a trust doesn't mean that it's the organization that owns the property. And what they're concerned about here is that we give you $10,000 to fix up this property, but then you as an individual person own the property. And so at any time, you can move your business to another location, and now we spent $10,000 for you to fix up a property that's no longer being used as a recovery home, because it's owned by you as a person, not by the actual organization or the business that's providing services. So that's why we need to see that it's the organization that owns the property and not a person or an individual. And then is a separate budget required for each property? Yes, you'll submit a different application for each property. And so you'll fill out that budget form for each property. And so as we said, okay, you said call you guys out to the property first and then do the application. Yes, you have to apply for recovery housing certification. We have to do the on-site visit. And then after you get the on-site visit report, you will use that report to help you complete your application. And then you will get approval. And then after you get approval is when you should go ahead and do the repairs and start collecting all of your documentation. So hopefully that's clear for everyone. Right. Okay, I am not seeing any more questions. All right, so we are due for recertification in July 2024. Can we start the process in April? Yes, and I would recommend that you start the process in April because if you're due in the summer, turning in your application in April is a really good time to do that, so that way we've got enough time to do everything by July. And yes, if your houses are due for recertification this fall or this winter, then yes, you can go ahead and apply early to make sure that you that you get in line for your certification review and for funds. So we'll accept reasonably early applications if you think that you're gonna need these funds, so that way we can help you get through the application process and get you what you need. All right, so somebody asked if I can go over some key points in a quick summary. So my quick summary is, to be eligible for these funds, you have to be a recovery home. These funds are for organizations that are seeking to meet the quality standards or to maintain the quality standards. So it's for new certifications as well as existing certifications. Funds are not for bringing new homes up and running and to do major renovations to properties. These funds really are for minor repairs that are needed to help an existing operating recovery home meet quality standards so that by the January 1st deadline, the home can meet those quality standards and have their certification. That's the purpose of the funds. In order to get the funds, you have to first apply for ORH certification. And during that process, we will conduct an on-site visit. And then after that on-site visit, you're going to get a full report of what's needed in order for you to achieve certification. And then you'll use that report to fill out the online application. And for each item on your budget, you're going to tell us how that helps you correct one of the things that was listed on the report. You also have to tell us how you're going to achieve every item on the report. So even if it's not a property repair, you need to tell us how you're going to address that issue by October 15th of 2024. You have to have achieved your ORH certification by October 15th, 2024, in order to get reimbursed. So we'll approve your application. You'll do the repairs. And then after the repairs are done, you're going to turn into us all your documentation. So we want to see the exact amounts that you paid in order to have items, repaired or any purchases that you made. We will only reimburse you what you actually paid, and any work needs to be done by a licensed contractor. So we'll need to see those invoices and those paid receipts from licensed contractors. And you'll also turn in your ORH certificate. So if you haven't yet earned certification and there's still items that are out there waiting for you to address, in order to achieve certification, you will have to address those in order for us to provide the funding. And so once you turn all that in, we will issue you a check and you will be reimbursed for the minor repairs. So I think those are all the key points. But certainly on our website here, if you go down this info@email, that comes straight to me. So if you have questions or if you're confused, please reach out and don't hesitate. I'd rather you ask a question rather than you submit an application and we need to do a lot of work, revising the application. So please do ask questions if you're confused, because if you submit a really good application, that just saves us a ton of work. So, all right. All right, so just to clarify, if I'm opening a new home, it is mostly ready, but I do not have all the beds and dressers yet. I do not have any residents yet. Are you saying I'll not be eligible to apply for funds to buy the rest of the furniture I need to become certified? And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you have to achieve full certification by October 15th. So, and you would have to tell us in your application how you're going to achieve that full certification by October 15th. So if you've got a great program and you've got all your staff in place, all your policies and procedures are in place, the only thing you're missing is a few beds, and then you can tell us in your application thing, like, hey, I've got referrals coming in, I've got people planning on moving in next month, and then we're going to be up and running and we're going to be fully certified in October. That's great. We can approve that application. What we can't approve is somebody it's a brand new house, they need repairs done, and they don't have things in place to make sure that that home is fully up and operational by October. Again, we need to make sure that this is about helping people achieve that full certification. And if you can't provide us enough evidence that you're going to be able to do that by October 15th, then we're not going to be able to provide the funds. We're going to give those funds to other organizations that that are able to meet that October 15th deadline. So yeah, and again, please feel free to reach out to us, to call us, and to ask us questions. And again, your on-site reviewers who visit you, when they do the on-site review, they're there for the purpose of doing your on-site review. They're not experts in the grant funds. They don't administer the grants. We have different staff working on that. So, they're there to help you. And if you ask them a question, be prepared for them to say, I need to check back at the office and get back to you. So if you have questions about the grant, please email me, email the info ad email. We'll get back to you about the grant. And when the reviewers are there at the property, let them focus on doing the review. And that's what they're there to do. They're not there for the purposes of a grant. So again, just want to be clear that we have different staff working on these projects. And so if you have questions, I want to try to get you to the right place. And of course, our staff can always help get you connected to the right place too, if you do have questions. So, all right, I am not seeing any other questions. So again, the email here and our phone number is on our website. Feel free to reach out and contact us. And with that, I am going to end the webinar. I look forward to receiving your applications for certification and receiving your applications for funding. We're really grateful to have these funds, and we're excited to help operators achieve certification. I hope everyone has a great afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you on future webinars.